So in the last 3 or 4 days, I've been looking deeper and deeper into the Synchron Player and really being impressed more and more with what I see. And you really have to take a serious look at this player if you're one of those folks that have really gotten excited about music. If you're using programs like Scalar, the orchestra, and Remedy, these are all programs that, for the new beginner, these type of programs make you excited about the majesty and the grandeur and the emotion of orchestral music. I think it's really taking people by storm how they can now create music in their basement, on their computer. And it's really teaching people a lot about music. And I myself have learned so much and get so much enjoyment out of these types of programs. But say you have so much enjoyment that you're really getting serious about learning more and more about orchestral music and, all the instruments of the orchestra. And you're getting serious about your sound, about your instruments, and about how you're going to go about and create some of your own music at a higher level. And as we've been saying, the Synchron Player is such a strong platform for both the new user and the experienced expert, in my opinion. With their presets and their big bang orchestra offerings, really impressive for the new user to go from something, such a great program like the orchestra to, if they want to get even deeper into it, to get into the big bang orchestra is just even taking it to another level. And then, of course, all the very extensive libraries of all the instruments of the orchestra, so well done and on so many velocity layers, and really impressive. So if you are looking to go to this next level, the Synchron Player is such a great platform because it's so easy to use and powerful at the same time. So the new user can look at it, watch a few videos, and really understand how to get things going, either through a preset really quickly, where you just, call up an instrument, drag out a preset, load an articulation, and just start playing music. But it also has to be capable to take you right to the top of the mountain if you want to go there, with things like creating very powerful real-time dynamic layers, really fine-tuning all your articulations and customizing them, painting in, not just using expression maps to just grab some notes and just say, okay, I want these to be staccatos. I want, maybe just the top notes to be spiccatos. I want the longer ones, grab them and use a attribute articulation for sustains and whatnot. That's fine, but what you're doing is you're just switching from one to the other. It's just a switch. The program says, okay, this is staccato and this is going to be spiccato. This one's legato, and you just grab this one and you switch it to sustain, and it just switches. And that's fine, and that's powerful to an extent on its own. And the VSL does offer all kinds of expression maps for their products, which is wonderful. And you can load those up, and they'll appear either down by, there's two different types of articulation or expression maps in Cubase. There's the directional, which are usually down here, and they set a direction and keep going till you set another direction, a different articulation, or the attribute ones where you just select a bunch of MIDI notes and all your articulations show up here, and you can change it from staccato to, like I just said, sustains or whatever. But they're generally switches, on or off, right? And that's somewhat limiting when you have maybe a passage where you don't want just switching on and off. Maybe it's a more emotional piece where you want to say, well, I want to be able to grab a CC channel, and instead of just switching on and off articulations, I want to be able to crossfade key switch. It's kind of like, instead of regular key switching, it's like crossfade key switching. And that's what the Synchron Player can do really well. You can, if you set a short or a long note and have it crossfade between the two with a controller, like I was showing in the last video, what happens when you assign that controller to a CC, and let's say CC 22, which I've got here, and right now 22 is controlling my attack, but it also could control the crossfading between two different articulations. And so what you end up getting is, when you get your pencil tool out here, you literally just paint in some marcados where you want marcados, and you have not just an on-off switch, but you have crossfaded in and out of what you want to paint in. Maybe you want to paint in some vibrato, portamentos, different types of legatos, and you don't want them just to be switched on or off. And again, when I watched Robert Singer's video, really opened my eyes to how well that's suited to giving you a more nuanced and creative flowing way to change your articulations. And of course you can set up unlimited amounts of, well, I don't know if unlimited. I know you can have 8 different of the dimension controllers, right, in one player. So you could have 8 different crossfading dimension layers for having, 8 different types of control. CC control 22 could be your vibrato. In this case, it's set up to be the attack. It could be to switch between legatos and with or without vibrato. Different types of short notes. I mean, it's so versatile in what you could do. And so that's another reason why it's more useful and friendly to somebody who is concerned about all the levels of regular key switches, which can be really intimidating. Anybody who's used sample libraries, the key switch is just kind of a pain, because you want to have both hands on the keyboard, and yet you want it to miraculously change from just a staccato, but you want more attacks, you want faster notes are coming up, and you want it to change to spiccato and fast repetition spiccatos, and but you want to do it in an elegant way that doesn't, you can't hear the transitions, and it's just fluid and reactive to what you need it to do. And setting the key switching changes to a CC while using velocity crossfade is such an elegant way to do that. Now, there are times when you may want to or need to have, say you have a bunch of very short notes and a bunch of them. So you've got like short notes that have many patterns of notes, and you want just the top ones to be spiccato, and you don't mind, in fact you want them to be just turned on and off like switches. So just at the highest level you're hitting your spiccatos. Then of course you can just go and you can use a regular articulation attribute and just set them that way. So it's the best of both worlds. And I've also discovered that with patches changing and all that, if you load up a regular articulation map of say this preset, if you change it or anything, it's going to change the preset of your expression maps, and that might be an issue. But I found that just through sheer laziness, the way I do it is if I just want to call up one expression map that handles all my VSTs, Synchron Player, the ARC series from Berlin Strings, whatever, just about any VST, they usually have the very similar naming convention for their key switches. And so all I really do is say if I wanted to create, and let's reset this instrument. So now I want to create a custom preset, and that may not have a pre-made expression map that's been available. Either you can buy them or you get them with some products. But since I'm making a custom preset, that may or may not even work with some of the pre-made stuff. But I know if I do it this way, I can always get exactly what I want and do it quickly. So I will just load I've got like a 26 different articulations for all libraries preset. And all I did was, I didn't even name them. I just made mapping for 26 slots, all just numerically down the line starting at C0. And if you want to change it where it starts at, you can change that through what the root key is down here, right? So if you find you're using a library that C0 is, in the way of something, you can just, all these will change to a new root key. You could go -1, C for your root note, and they'll all shift over one octave. So it's very versatile. You're basically just creating a one-off 26 different ways of changing articulation that will apply to almost any VST. And so when I'm creating a fully customized patch, you can just start dragging in whatever you want, and it's named here. And usually you may have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different, maybe even 10 different articulations that you want to use on one track, and you want to be able to just since I know this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're already named here. Why even bother naming it in here and taking all the time to make a custom thing where you could just load this, and immediately I know that when I grab this articulations, I have the first 1 to 26 of whatever's here. So I know the first one is portato short, the second one sustain marcato. So anytime I want these notes to be that, I just know that, okay, because I have 2 monitors open, right? So I can see this is 1, 2, and 3 and what they are. I don't have to name them twice somewhere. On this list here, I just go, okay, no, I know number 3 is sustained marcatos, so now these are sustained marcatos. I know that these are number 2. I can switch them to number 2, which is sustains. And so, I'm never worried about articulation maps or the expression maps. And that way it's universal. Then I can go to my next VST. I don't have to bring in a new map, load a new map, or write a new map. I can go straight to whatever has the, key switches and just work the same way. Because every interface always shows you where the key switches are and what keys they're on, right? So it just works. And it's a very fast way to just never have to worry about expression maps anymore. And that's for attributes, of course. If you want to use the directionals down here, then maybe have them all listed and assign that. But I don't use that very often at all. In fact, with this new system where I'm using controller data lanes. I just, there may be sometimes when you want to use the directional, but I find this so flowing, and where you're able to just paint in where you want marcados to be cross-faded in, right? Where you want whatever you have assigned for this lane to be painted in. So you really are painting in marcado strength, and you're painting in vibrato strength, you're painting in portamento amount, and you're painting it just so quickly and where you want it, and for what whatever notes you have up here. It's really intuitive. So in the next segment, we'll continue on with some of the things I discovered yesterday that should have been in video number 2. So a couple things I wanted to mention, and they should have been in yesterday's video or the part 2 video. A couple things I discovered how they work, and I should have mentioned. One is how you can copy and paste one slot to another. You simply copy the slot, and then you can create an empty one there and paste that. And that particular articulation will be copied wherever you paste it. And you can also copy root slots. So it's a very handy way. Like the other day, I was trying to figure out how to drag it over, but it closed, the folder closed every time. But I could have just, and I should have just copied the slot and then went over to the other area and just pasted it there. So very handy. But an even more handy thing about that is, when you are using all the presets, they're a great way to showcase and explore and discover all the sounds. So you can go through these presets, they're all set up, and you can explore all the different types of sounds, phrases, and dynamics. And you'll find lots that you like, and sometimes there are several dimensions down, and it can be somewhat, there's a lot of different articulations in here, but it's the best way to explore them and find them, right? So if you do find articulation, say that, or something, buried in a type of legato, fast no vibrato as an example. So we can copy that slot, and then if we simply just go and say, if we were to for this track, say duplicate this track, a great way to find, discover, and be able to then bring in and copy each slot that you like is on your second track. So we have, this is on our first track, and we have identical on this track. But on this track, I'm going to go to, say, double-click default, and this is where I'm customizing and starting from scratch, as we've talked about. And I'm going to develop this entire preset exactly how I want, with all kinds of cool controls and that. But I don't want to be searching through the patch libraries, which can be hundreds of different types of articulations, and they may be somewhat named, not differently, but in different categories, and it can be hard to find what you're looking for in here. With the solo violin, oftentimes I found myself trying to find what I discovered in this player up here. So let's just open that. So I discovered something really cool here, and I wanted that exact articulation, and I couldn't find it that easily in the patches, simply because they have to abbreviate, because otherwise the fonts would just go on forever. So they abbreviate, and for a newer user, it might be hard to understand what some of these mean and find what you're looking for quickly. So a super great way to just, you can still use this, all the presets, find what you're looking for, discover all kinds of cool articulations. Like I said, just copy the slot, and then just go over to your other track here, which you're creating from scratch, and just create one opening there and paste the slot, and you got that exact vibrato that you like, and you've done it really quick without having to search for it, right? So And to hear this, you would have to, which then leads me to the other thing that I want to talk about. So I have an articulation in here, but because I pasted it in and I didn't drag it in, it didn't come with any channel, so I can't hear it. If I was to drag one in here, it would create a channel. But since I pasted it in, like, how do you create channels in the mix page from scratch? And I should have mentioned that yesterday. Well, the plus here is for your main mixer channels, and that's for your returns. So click that, and you'll get a return. And now you can hear, because this will be automatically assigned to the first mixer channel. And if you want to create a return for all kinds of effects and stuff, you can also, and you get rid of them by right-clicking down here, remove mixer channel or remove return channel. So we'll remove return channel. But even more interesting is the next little bit where, okay, so that's how you create your own mixer channels, and you can create as many as you want apparently. Let's just remove that one. So we've created one now, and let's say we dragged in, and just as an example, we're in the patches here, you know, we drag in a staccato, we drag in détaché, sustain. Now there's some interesting and really cool ways we can do mixes here, because each channel you drag in, there may be a time where you want a special channel for just your staccato, because your main channel may have an impulse that's just, you know, first chairs. So it's up front or second chair violin. So it's right up front. And if we go with the first, it'll go even more to the left. And that's fine. And that's where we hear it. But what if you wanted just your vibratos or whatever, another articulation to be on another channel with its own impulse? And the way you would do it is create the second channel, what we did, and you can call it whatever you want. So you can right-click and rename it to staccatos. And right now, it's turned on, and you can turn it off that way. Just make sure you turn it on so it's live. And you can also assign it a totally different impulse response. So we could, in this case, we could send it to something else like bass solo, which is on the other side and a little farther out, and we can crank up and make it, you know, seem further away. But you can use any impulse response that you can load up. And you can change the return, so to give it a little bit of algorithmic if you want. And you can change all the effects and everything else on this channel. So the staccatos are going to be treated completely different. And the way you direct certain articulations to these new channels had me a little confused for a while, but I got some help, and they told me how to do it. So you simply go to the edit channel, and down here, all your new channels, and the one we just created, staccato, which is the second channel, you can switch it to. So how cool is that? For every articulation that you load up, you can create a custom channel, and you can assign any one of your articulations to any one of those channels. And all the new channels will show up here. So now my staccato will show up on just this channel. So since I have staccato selected, make sure you have the right one selected, it shows up indeed right on my new channel with my longer and to the right impulse response. So if I look on my meters, we can see that indeed it's more to the right. So it's super fast way to really create your own channels, which leads even to more fun, because once you start creating your own custom articulations, to have the ability to set them or point them to their own custom mix channels means that in your presets, If you want to, treat your staccatos totally differently with different impulses, and you can then say, okay, to the controllers, you can add a controller, and you can say that your mixed channels, now you have staccato here as a mixed channel. You have the ability to add new mixed channels in here and to give them controllers and assign them CCs. So you can automate how much your staccatos come in and out as you add channels that way, right? From the perform page. So really powerful way to add channels, give them new controllers, and bring them in and perform that controller with automation. So that's great because not only can you build your articulations and layer them and mix them how you want and control them how you want, they can be given completely separate audio channels mixed differently, and that channel itself can then be automated. So in the last segment, I'm going to put this all together, create a default preset that's hopefully going to tie all this up into a nice, fast way to create a custom preset with custom routing and custom articulations coming in and out. And we're going to use the CC channels to just bring in some vibrato and whatever we need in a cross-faded manner. So you basically aren't limited using this player, and we'll get to that next. All right, so let's tie everything together now and come up with a preset, custom preset from absolute scratch. And let's call it strings. So it'll be the name, and we can drag in something from the patches here. We could go with we're basically just going to play the simplest little, it's going to be nothing musical, but it's going to show you the technical aspects of how this works, and so that you can see it or hear it in a really good way, what's going on with all this. So let's drag in our basic legato here, and let's just hear the sound. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with, and why not just, if we're customizing everything, let's quickly change the color to a nice green. We see our key switch here. Let's switch that to, we know we can switch it to where we want, and we're going to tuck it way back here. So let's go to mix, and we basically just have our first channel that popped in when we dragged in our legato. But to go over exactly how to create your own channels and feed audio to it and hook it up and automate it all and set it up to its own impulse response, let's quickly do that. So we have another channel with the plus button. The first one's going to be called close. Second one we will call something like far, because they will kind of be showing off how we can move whatever articulation in the room. So the first one's going to be a close room, so we go to the impulse response. Synchronize solo strings, our usual first chair as a nice close violin, and we can make the room not so wet, so we're going to turn that down a bit. We'll turn on algorithmic reverb, and we'll send a little bit our way, not too much. And the same with the far, we will start with something totally different for the far. We'll go with like back in the woodwinds, so just behind the strings is the woodwinds, but in the middle. Or we could go with brass just to show even a bigger difference. So let's go with the brass, and or maybe the mallets to get it, because I want it to show that it's going to be on one side and then the other side and farther back. So let's go with the mallets. So now instead of first violins, this channel will be, if though it's back where the mallets would be in the orchestra, and we can turn that up a little bit, give it a little bit more room to that channel. and it's also, so they're both turned on. Make sure you have them turned on, so they have to be lit up down here. And we can give even a little bit more of the algorithmic reverb to that. But right now, if I play it, you won't hear anything out of the second channel. To do that, it's quite simple. It took me a while to figure this out. I had to get some help to figure it out. I didn't find it intuitive, but it could be just my kind of silly way of thinking. But really, it does kind of make sense, because you want to edit that channel. You go there and you come down. And since it's every articulation can be routed wherever you want, let's route that now to far and listen to it. And indeed, the room has changed. And if we go back, if we play our little, you can instantly tell that it's switched back to the close and to the left from the far in the back. Very powerful, considering that you can have any articulation go to any customized channel anywhere in your hall. That's really great. So we have the channels hooked up, but what if we want to automate all that? We could have the violinist walking over to a closer mic, so to speak, as an example, right? So if you want to automate your channels, you send them through this little thing here. But let's make sure it's back at the close, and it is. So now we have to go to control to set up a control for our new, and we hit this plus here. We know it's a mixer channel, so there's so much here. Just go where mix, because it's a new mix we made. And so let's add our close, which was our original channel. We want to automate the volume, and we want to send it to, we could really put it anywhere. We could put it on a controller slider. We could put it on a CC for in our DAW, so that could be on a controller lane in the DAW. But let's just send it to controller, say 20, which would be down here. 20 for that one. So now we have our controller set up here. Let's do the next one. And to mix and go to far. And we want to control the volume in this case. You could do the delay or all these different options, but we're controlling volume, and we're going to control it with controller, that was 20, let's go with 21. And so that is now set up as far as being able to control those with curves. Let's bring it into the performance page. And first let's, so we have everything as normal, let's bring in expression. Let's bring in velocity crossfade, which will turn on. Let's bring in attack. Let's bring in release. Anything that I figure I might want to work with this preset, I can bring in now. And dynamic range, maybe not. I think we're good for now. Filter, we could bring in a few others, but let's stay focused here. So we did turn this on to blue, so that's engaged. Velocity crossfade, that's important. But now we want to go down here, and we want to bring in our two mixed channels we just made. So there's the close, and now that we made them, they're available down here, and bring in the far. They're set to controller CC 20 and 21. So in your DAW, you could have these set up here, and I've already got CC 21 set up here. So it's already brought in, and it can be controlled with a MIDI lane controller data, if you want to do that. So they can be automated really in any way you want now. And it doesn't just have to be one channel, it could be all kinds of different ideas you have for different custom articulations. Really powerful. It just takes a while to wrap your head around how powerful all this is, because I think we're often used to so many limitations when you're given all these things to use for your presets. It takes a while for you to understand how this all can be used. So that's how you set up channels from scratch. And we'll leave that, and we can send something to the far channel whenever we want to test that. We can just do that. So So we have that set up, and we have all these set up. And attack we may want to mess with, the legato blur, and so these can all be set to controllers now, as we've talked about. So what if we now want to say that, okay, if we play this now with our just performance legato, we hear what it sounds like. And if we animate this, we can get some nice movement as even this very simple line, right? There's just notes just going down. I mean, what we could do just quickly is animate this. And we could say that we want just a controller lane to animate it and give it some movement as far as playing the different velocity layers in this specific articulation. So that's one thing we can do really quick. But before we do that, why don't we customize it? So let's push it out to the next dimension. And let's turn this on so it's going to crossfade. Now let's say we don't just want performance legato, we want to just, we want to mess around a little bit and say we like the way the vibrato or the expressiveness, but I think we're going to keep this just legato and sustain with no vibrato, and we're going to paint in the amount of emotion later. So just to show you how versatile this is, I've got these two layers that are going to make up, and we'll call this just our legato and legato sus. So it's going to be a mixture of legato and sustain. And so we know that we can, when we click on here now, we're given the option to change the parallel mode to mix if we want. So we want a mixture of these two. So it's just to show that we can do whatever we want with a patch. It just doesn't have to be a normal just articulation. So now, because the blue is on, we have a pure mix of these two together. So now, instead of just being legato, it's going to be legato and a no vibrato sustain. And that's pretty loud, so let's go to here on the sustain, and let's turn that part of it down. And so we have more legato, or we could adjust this, but now let's go back. We can turn down the sustain a little more, but you can adjust the ratio. So that's a pure mixture of these two. They're mixed. So all right, so that, and if we add one here and click down here, that folds back, and so that's, we have our custom legato sustain. All right, so the next part of this layer we want to do is what we're going to paint in to this. And this is where this can be either sustain, vibrato, progressive would be a good idea. Or we could paint in some marcatos so that the attacks get stronger as we paint this in. Really, you can, but I think one of the better ideas to try would be vibrato or portamento, just that you can see it really easy and hear it. Or you could just turn it in. You can paint in when you want your legato to get very vibrato and progressive. You could also paint that in. But let's try it with the sustain, or let's go with the legato vibrato progressive. So we drag that in there. And so we want to determine, we want a smooth transition, and we want to paint in anytime we want heavy progressive vibrato into this line of these notes here. So what we have to do here is turn on crossfading, and since we're at perform page, we know we have it turned blue on here, so crossfading is all set up. And it doesn't have to be just progressive or vibrato. We could also push this out and make this a custom, but let's keep things fairly simple here. So we have that turned on, and what we need to do now is make a controller for this. So we want to add a dimension control. So go up to dimension control up here and pick the first one, and say we want that to be controller, let's say 22. I think that one's open. We'll try 22. So back in your DAW here, let's just see if we can call up 22. We got 21. There's 22. So this lane now is going to be, this controller lane is 22. And this will control how we can paint in our custom vibrato, progressive vibrato from just legato and sustain. So instead of just using a expression map where you literally grab some notes and either switch it to legato or switch it to sustain, this is so much better because we literally are crossfading into a mixture of exactly what we want, and we're painting in how much we want as time goes by and wherever we want to paint it in as this passage plays. Very powerful. So if we got everything set up, we also have to turn it and gauge it up here. So let's turn on controller A here, which gives us our dial, which is controlled by 22. So in theory, I should be able to just paint in when these notes start going vibrato. And so just for clarity's sake, let's just make it really obvious and go with a lot of vibrato right in the middle. Now this should be going from legato to here. As simple as that, according to how much of it is, according to where we painted it in. So. And that's what we get. We get a nice painted in amount of vibrato and a nice progressive vibrato. So if these notes rang out longer, it would get even more. So just to prove that, we could just grab this note and make it extra long, and we could delete these two notes and start it from the beginning. And if we paint in a straight, well, let's start the ramp somewhere around there, and maybe fully right up there, and down to 0 here. It should, what we should now get is it playing into a long, progressive, strong vibrato right at the end from no vibrato. And that's what we get, a nice change from just the sustain to a nice progressive legato. All right, so what if we just go back a little bit and change what we have here back to where it was, and we make that a little stronger. And we can also select all the events and get rid of that. And say, okay, so we've tried that, but let's try something else. Let's try something a little more pronounced. Let's go with a Portamento. And the Portamento doesn't have to be just a normal Portamento. We can expand that, and we can add the Zigan type of Portamento. So now this is Portamento. Oops. Sure what happened there. All right, so that's Portamento. But what we want to do is we want to have two types of Portamento as it ramps up, just to show how powerful this is, because not only can you paint in the Portamento, but you can paint in that Portamento, and that Portamento itself can be changing over time on another lane as you paint that in also. And they won't conflict. It's literally two separate lanes of information controlling two different things here. So let's add another controller. So B, which we have to set up here. And let's add controller B, dimension controller B, and that will be on, let's see, I think we have lane 20 open. So controller 20, And now that will just control the type of portamento that is going to be brought in, and that will be cross-faded between the two. All right, so now we have 20 and 21, or 22 lane and 21 lane. And can we make that smaller? No, let's just make that a little bigger. So again, on lane 22 will be the going from legato to full portamento. All right, so we just paint in how we want that to act. And then on controller lane 20, we want to say that, okay, while it's all portamento in here, we want that to change. We want it to go from one type of portamento to the other while it's being, so there should be a change in there. So if I did it right, it should actually do that. We should go from a legato to a portamento, and that portamento should change as it changes right here. And that's exactly what we get. The note kind of died off there, but that's exactly what happened if you watch these. And it's a bit loud, so I'm going to turn down the main. We'll turn it down here. In fact, and then we could control the velocity crossfade of the samples themselves, right? So we could also do that, and that could be on, we could set that to a controller of my joystick, right? So I'll learn that to my MIDI joystick here on my keyboard. So while it's playing, I'm going to move the velocity crossfade up and down. You're going to see it go from the legato to the portamento, and the portamento is going to change over time. So now let's play it again. And that's exactly what we got. It went from the legato, customized legato, and went to the portamento that was also customized. And while it was doing full portamento, that portamento on another controller lane, the portamento switched as I painted it in and how I wanted it to change. I could change the type of portamento and say I don't want it to end with Zigan, I want it to start with Zigan. And so let's try that and see. Oops, where are we here? Gotta give it some audio. Okay. Oh, not sure what happened there. Let's see. It should come in with the control. Oh, for some reason, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. You see the mix close volume is being, that's our first audio channel. That is being controlled by also CC20. So I just have to set that to none. For some reason that connected to CC20. And I'm not sure why it did that. Maybe that's some kind of quirk there. And the far mix, which isn't being used right now, we can also turn that to none. Not sure why that did that, but anyway, that's what happened. But back to what we were talking about. So now it should again start with just legato sustain, go to portamento, but this time it should start with Zigan and end with the normal portamento. Let's see if that works. And got my controller set up here to bring it louder or quieter. I'm not sure why it didn't. The first time it ended with Zigan, so we might have to change that controller. So if we go to the controller 20, we're going to flip it That's another way to do it. Let's try it again. Yeah. So we got the result then. You may have to flip the controller or bias it one way or the other, but you have so much control. But that's exactly what happened. At the end of the passage, it ended on regular portamento. So we'll just do it again. Yeah. So you really have a lot of control, so much control. And again, you could just overwrite this now with, like I've mentioned, some other things. We've tried vibrato. You could, if you wanted, if these were a lot of faster notes, you could say, hey, I want to draw in some of the notes, marcato notes. So instead of setting the cheating with attack and maybe boosting up the attack here, kind of artificially, you could say to yourself, hey, why not just assign a marcato layer and say, yeah, there are some notes, as this, there could be hundreds of notes here. There's going to be a group of notes. I want them to have stronger attack, but I want real stronger attack, like a marcato attack. So instead of faking it, make a lane, set that lane to marcatos, drag in a marcatos, customize it if you want, but just make sure that marcato's on its own controller, set that controller to whatever lane you want, and paint in how much marcato you want and where you want it. To me, that's just such an elegant, powerful way to do it, and one of the best things about it is you're not just switching articulation using an expression map where you just grab one of or a couple of your notes and go to articulations and switch it from staccato to legato. This way is so much better because when it's switching, they're cross-faded and melting one into the other. And you're also saying at the same time, you're getting a nice crossfade, but you're also saying how much you want just by writing in how much you want and where you want it. And you can, just draw in the slope, or if you want it to immediately be strong of something, you may want to just go straight in and give it some staccatos. You may want to say, okay, just these notes here, I want them to be strong, have strong marcato attacks. So, you can really set this up how you want it and just paint in as you go. And then, but you're not limited by that, as I've also stated. You can also use mapping. You could make a secondary track, which you could use your regular expression mapping, which I've talked about. You can mix the two. You can grab just the complex, all the notes for super short notes, for staccatos, spiccatos, and that type of thing. And you could just, copy and paste them to your second track, which you could literally grab every second one and make it spiccato. Or another thing you can also do, if you don't want them to crossfade, there's no reason why these have to be crossfaded. They can literally just switch from one to the other if you want that effect, if you want it to switch more abruptly. So there's all kinds of ways you can get what you want in here. And of course, it can be just a pure mixture. So, having said all of that, we've talked about the controls, how you automate them, how you can bring in any type of control, including custom mixed channels with separate impulses. We talked about how you can make controller lanes and paint in what you want where, and how crossfading works, how crossfading dimension trees work, and how you can customize and make a very particular articulation if you want. If you're not quite happy with just a staccato, but you don't want to change it to a marcato or a détaché, You can customize your staccato to make it almost a détaché, but with some pluck of a pizzicato, or, you know, you can customize it, and that is so great. And then you can play it how you want. Really hope you enjoyed this set of videos. It wasn't the easiest set of videos to make because while I was doing it, I was learning some more aspects of the program, and I had to go over and make new videos more than once. But really impressed by the Synchron Player. All the concerns I've had with other players, or you know, issues with the key switching. Key switching is a big thing with a lot of people. It's like, you know, and this program had multiple key switches, and if you don't know how it really works, you may be turned off by that. But now hopefully I showed you that you really, the key switches are the least, nothing to be concerned about, as you have full control of how you can work with all these great articulations, how you can automate them, and everything that I've talked about. So that's it for this video. Stay tuned for some more videos. Have a great night or day wherever you're at.